and welcome to Getting Your Money's Worth, the show that focuses on value. I'm Judith West, and our guest today is Ira Stoll, editor and founder of Future of Capitalism, and also author of Samuel Adams, A Life. Okay, hi. Thanks for being on the show, Ira.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, so we're going to skip around a little bit because, after all, you have a huge background. You really have been in print journalism most of your life, right?
That's right.
Yeah. How come you didn't get a bailout for print journalism?
Oh,
Everybody else
we're
got
the
a
only
bailout.
ones who didn't get
You're the
one,
only one who
right?
get a bailout, right? Yeah. By the way, I saw was it yesterday's Times, that's what they're doing in France.
It's true. France has a system of subsidizing newspapers. It hasn't worked very well. The newspapers are still losing money there.
Do you know
and they're trying to do it here.
Yeah, and they're also giving away, which I thought was kind of a good idea, they're giving away free copies of papers to teenagers to try to get them to read papers. But do you know how they're advertising the giveaway of free newspapers to teenagers?
No.
On the internet.
Yeah.
Right. So anyway, we'll get to it. You are founder and editor of a website, Future of Capitalism. Do you feel that, that title you chose, does that mean that you think that capitalism might be threatened?
I think it is threatened.
How so?
Well, free market capitalism, as we know it, suggests that the people who have the capital make the decisions on how to allocate their capital. But I think we've seen with the auto industry bailout and with the banking bailout and with the plans to increase taxes and increase government's role in the healthcare system that increasingly people are being taxed on their capital and the politicians are making decisions on how to allocate it. And that leads to more inefficiency and often corruption. And
not the American way.
Yeah.
But you know something, it's said that one of the reasons that this has happened with so speedily, such a vigor, is because so many of the people that were making decisions made them so incorrectly that the government, it feels like the only person that can take charge and do anything is the government.
Well, some of those people who were making incorrect decisions were in the government.
Right.
There were a lot of perverse incentives set up by Congress and by the executive branch. So, for instance, the home mortgage tax deduction encouraged people to buy houses, maybe even if they couldn't afford houses. And on top of that, there were subsidies for people with extra low down payments. And there were government guarantees of mortgages below a certain size. So that created this bubble in housing that when it burst, you can blame the bankers for making the loans, but you can or buying the loans and putting them on their books, but you can also blame the politicians for creating this housing bubble.
Okay, but yes, and the reality is, I suppose there's enough blame to go around for everybody. Plenty of blame, right? Plenty of blame. Okay, but those values of working hard and achieving on your own in the free market. How are we going to get back there? Do we have a choice here?
Well, a lot of the way things work in history, it's a lot of what I'm writing about on futureofcapitalism.com. One thing I've observed as a historian is there's a lot of experimentation. So people try one thing and it doesn't work, and then they realize they made a mistake and they go back to it. So we tried big government in America in the 70s and late 60s, and people thought it went too far, and they elected Ronald Reagan and rolled some of it back.
Right, exactly. So it's history is kind of this too shall pass. This too shall pass.
I think
what is
that's
the connection between Future of Capitalism and the book you wrote, Sam Adams?
Well, Samuel Adams was a great believer in property rights, and in a way, the Boston Tea Party, which Samuel Adams gave the order to start, was a protest against a bailout, a British government bailout of the East India Company, which is a private tea company. So,
and we just had our own tea party not long ago.
Exactly.
What was that a protest about?
Well, people in America are having these tea party protests to protest increased taxes, taxes were one of the issues at the core of the American Revolution.
Right. So, again, as part of this, history repeats itself.
I think that's right.
when you were editor, you were editor of the New York Sun, right?
Managing editor.
Managing of the New York Sun. Yeah, you wrote about free market. You wrote about school vouchers. You wrote about these issues. Who's picked up that mantle in the press today?
Well, I'm trying to do some of it on the website futureofcapitalism.com. There's actually, for all the talk about the liberal press, there are a lot of conservative voices in the press, whether it's Fox News, Rush Limbaugh, the Wall Street Journal editorial page, the New York Post editorial page. There are George Will. There's a lot of syndicated columnists. There's a lot of voices out there, and all these bloggers. I mean, it's amazing what's going on the internet.
What from your experience and from there, what is the mood today?
Well, there's some optimism. I think we had some growth figures on the third quarter that came out this morning where there's been some comeback in the stock market.
Is the market up today?
Today, yes, in response to those growth figures. But I think there's a lot of uncertainty, and uncertainty is bad for business because people don't know what decisions to make in terms of how to spend their capital, because they don't know if taxes are going up. They don't know what the rules are going to be for banks, for health insurance, for carbon and global warming. And until that gets figured out in Washington, people are hesitant to make big bets.
Even if they don't like the decision, they want to have a decision.
Right. The saying is, I can make money under any set of rules as long as I know what they are.
What the rules are. And I suspect that that's what the banks are going to be working on, too. What's your point of view? Should the banks get slammed with, is it bad to pay people who perform a lot of money? I thought that's kind of the way it used to work in America. If you worked hard and earned your money, you got it.
Right. And it also used to work that if you lost a lot of money, you went out of business without getting a bailout from the taxpayers.
Right. Like any business.
So
you don't make it, you go Chapter 11 or 7.
Exactly. The bankers are trying to have one part of that without the other part of that. And the government is kind of going along. So neither side is right.
It's kind of maybe you're the one that used that expression. I was reading some of your sites. Tails you win and heads you win.
Yeah, that's right.
That's you, right? Tails you win and heads you win. Right. Too big to fail. But the truth of and now what GMAC is going for a third bailout. When is this going to stop?
I think it's outrageous. I think it's just outrageous. And
I think as we're speaking, it's like $5 million every second or something. There's a huge numbers. Nobody knows how much $1 trillion is.
Right. And the money, a lot of it is coming from poor or middle-class working people to bail out unionized auto workers or Wall Street investment bankers who are doing better. It's kind of like a reverse Robin Hood where you take from the poor and give to the rich.
But that's hardly what the change mandate was supposed to do.
No, Barack Obama has changed a lot of things that he said he was running on, from the individual mandate to health insurance to no tax increases on anyone earning less than $250,000.
Yeah, but we have a pretty friendly press still.
With the exceptions that I noted earlier.
Yeah, right.
Somebody said the watchdogs in Washington are curled up asleep.
Yeah. You mentioned blogging, and blogging certainly has given a lot of people a voice. Is that good?
I think it is good. The drawback that people talk about is fragmentation. Instead of having a common set of facts that everybody is aware of and could agree on, people are just reading blogs that they agree with, and they're not often exposed to alternative points of view. And I think that is a bit of a downside. But the upside is that more people have a voice, more people can participate, there's more points of view out there. And I think the American people are smart enough, they can sort of sort through all this and figure out what to believe.
Yeah. In your experiences, and you've studied this and you've written about it, when one party gets out of office, another party comes in, are these things usually reversible? I mean, for example, going down the road on some of the things that we're going down the road on, is that going to be reversible?
Well, it's reversible, but it takes a long time. I mean, if we're running trillion-dollar deficits, it's going to take years and years to pay those off, and either through inflation or through our children or grandchildren are going to be paying off those debts to the
How many
to the
zeros are
Chinese.
there in a trillion? Lots. Huh?
A lot.
A lot. Yeah, I think a trillion seconds is before there was man,
Right.
and that's seconds.
Right.
What would Sam Adams have said about all that?
Well, he probably wouldn't have been too pleased. On the other hand, he would probably be pleased to see that the country that he started more than 200 years ago is still going strong and operating basically under a system of freedom and free speech and religion and property rights and things that he thought was very important.
You know, some folks say that America's best days are over. What do you have to say?
I'm an optimist, and I think that...
I guess you have to be. You've been in the newspaper business for so many years.
Well,
right?
that's right. And, you know, I've seen incredible technological change in my... You know, I'm not that old. And, you know, when you think 20 years ago, Google didn't exist, and today it's one of the biggest companies in America and one of the most important companies.
And with cell phone, how?
Right, cell phones. When I was a kid, there were no cell phones. So there's these huge technological changes that really have big improvements to our quality of life. And a lot of them are invented in America, some of them by immigrants. And I think as long as our country appreciates and admires that rather than punishes it, I think America has a bright future ahead of us.
In fact, with all these, what is that? What did I read? 1 out of 10 Americans is unemployed? It's a very high number of unemployment, and a lot of those jobs aren't coming back. So I think that there is this need for this inventive spirit. You spoke, and then we have a very short period of time. You spoke about school vouchers. Are you still a fan?
I do believe that vouchers are a good idea for schools and for health care and for housing and, you know, for lots of other things, rather than having the government set up a monopoly and force people in. Give people choice.
Give people a choice how to spend their own money.
Right.
Right. Okay. Well, how old is Future of Capitalism?
Future of Capitalism is a couple months old at this point.
Yeah. And capitalism?
Capitalism has got a long history.
It's got a long history. Well, I'm going to say, I have to say, you're one of the sites that I read and learn from. So I'm going to wish you that you have the history on Future of Capitalism that somewhat matches the capitalism itself.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for being on the show. I'm Judith West. You're watching Getting Your Money's Worth. Thanks for watching.